Uno, dos, tres, cuatro, cinco, seis. No hable español.
Somebody call the po-po.
Crazy, baby. Crazy. Little Dirk's Bentley going
on the road.
Traveling from place to place with nothing more on our mind than hunting.
That's right.
Are we thinking about a countdown to
3, 2, 1?
Someone gonna find out. Crazy, baby.
Welcome to the RNA Outdoors podcast, fueled by Ripcord Arrow Rest and First Light Hunting Apparel. At RNA, we are public land DIY conservationists that love to share our passion for the outdoors. So join us and our team as we interview professionals in the industry to share insight knowledge that helps make hunters and anglers more successful. Hey listeners, subscribers, and fellow outdoorsmen and women. This is your host, Lucas Paw, and I'm excited to tell you about some of the sponsors that continue to help make this podcast not only happen, but grow and thrive in this digital world of audio content. This podcast is brought to you by Ripcord Arrow Rest, the bow hunter's #1 fall-away rest on the market. Ripcord is known for 100% full-time arrow containment and their patented drop-dead brake system that eliminates launcher bounce back. Best of all, Ripcord is backed by their rock-solid guarantee. If the original owner has a part break for any reason, it will be repaired or replaced at no charge. And did I mention? Ripcord is located in southwest Montana, where all their products are made with pride in America. Check them out at ripcordarrowrest.com and on their social media feeds. This podcast is brought to you by First Light Clothing and Hunting Apparel. Born in the Rockies in central Idaho, First Light's mission is to create simple, yet proven, versatile gear that provides comfort and performance in any situation while working to promote the pursuit of ethical hunting and stewardship. I recently joined the First Light Pro Staff team and have continued to be impressed year after year in their innovations in engineering of merino wool fabrics. 10 years ago, they started putting out wool fabrics with camo patterns, and immediately this changed the game. Since then, they offer multiple layering systems and kits in various proprietary patterns and continue to raise the bar with their competition. Find them online at firstlight.com or under their social media feeds. Go farther, stay longer. All right, folks, we are on the road again. Usually what you find with Jason and I is lately we've been on the road a lot, which is not a bad thing, but hey, no better time to sit and put on the headsets and do a little podcast while we're on the road, huh?
Man, traveling around the world, it's a lot of fun, people think, until you're always doing it, and then you start thinking, man, I just want to be home where I could put an elk steak on the grill. Man, yeah. I'm not even hungry after everything we've done this weekend, but hey.
Yeah, so welcome, folks. This is the RNA Outdoors podcast, and I'm your host, Lucas Paw, and I am here with my usual suspect sidekick, Mr. Jason Quick from the NRA. Welcome, Jason.
Rocking and rolling all day long. Glad to be here.
So we got in the truck and drove over to Las Vegas for a couple days. Jason had a little bit of work that he had to get done and some business, so I just kind of tagged along and hung out and ate food and gambled a little bit and won a little money, actually.
Yeah, well, that makes one of you. Congratulations, you know. I made my deposit to their light account. So
hey, somebody's got to pay for the LED lights that run at, 20 cents a year, so.
Exactly. But speaking of Vegas, for all of our listeners out there, we want to make sure that, you keep your thoughts and prayers with the people out there in Vegas and all the ones that were traveling in town that from that senseless shooting that happened. Vegas is a very resilient place. I will tell you that, being there was sombering, but at the same time, it was really great to see all the people in Nevada sticking together and helping and really coming together. It was kind of surreal a little bit that really when you go downtown, it was almost like nobody even really, like there was no change.
Yeah. I mean, I agree. So, 2 weeks ago, significant incident in Las Vegas, and 2 weeks later, you and I are there. We went downtown one night, and you would have never known that had happened. And the reason for that is Vegas is a place where people come from all over the world, right?
International destination location.
Absolutely, and people, are probably not going to look at it and say, "Man, I'm going to stop my trip from going because this happened." I mean, we live in the United States because it is a safe place, and we have a great military that allows us to do the things that we do. So it was. But what was interesting also through, our travels over the weekend, you and I had stopped at a few gun shops, and we had talked to some of the local owners there at the gun shops, and it was interesting talking to them about, have you guys seen an impact, on sales? And it seemed pretty unanimous that people are still in buying handguns, buying ARs, buying ammunition, and it hasn't really, put a damper on some of that stuff.
Yeah, and sometimes, when things like that happen, people kind of go a little over the other extreme where they're thinking, oh my gosh, we're going to lose everything. So they, of course, start hoarding and buying in large quantities. And we didn't necessarily see any of that. Most of the facilities that we visited, Locked and Loaded was one of the main ones. I mean, they had plenty of stuff on the shelf if anybody was looking for it. And it was amazing to me that really the Nevadans, really realized that this was just a senseless act of evil. And they looked at it just like that. And almost everybody we talked to was like, you can't stop evil.
Yeah.
Evil is evil. It's always going to happen. The only thing that stops a bad guy with a gun is a good guy with a gun. And I don't know how many people said, well, the first responders that were out there, they're the ones that are the heroes that made sure that didn't get worse than it was.
Well, it's like the president of the ATF said, guns don't kill people, people kill people, right? And that's really what I know what you've been fighting for years, and a lot of us are trying to continue to keep our rights to protect our Second Amendment is you got somebody who legally purchased all these firearms, and was a U.S. citizen, paid taxes, and just had an act of evil, done on this. And, it's hard to sit there and blame a firearm or blame a piece of ammunition for this when it requires someone behind that to make that act happen. So yeah. I agree to what you said. Our thoughts and prayers are out to those that were both directly and indirectly impacted by this event, and the hashtag Vegas Strong. I think that's rung pretty, resilient throughout the area. Like you said, people are bounce back, and that's Americans. We tend to bounce back pretty hard, and also, at the same time, we support everyone that's going through this kind of stuff, and, it's sent impacts all across the world. One of the things I know you and I saw was a lady that lives up in Sonoma County area that her house burnt down, and, oh, by the way, a week ago was at the concert where she lost her husband, and so there's people like that fighting a tough battle right now that we just need to be sensitive to, and always remember, that, like I said, we are Americans, and we're going to, fight to help those people and hopefully make things better, right? Make it a better place.
Amen to that.
So, Okay, so with that, our show today is planned to really just talk through 2017's hunting season so far, kind of do a recap of what we've done this year, and then also kind of look at what hunts we have left throughout the course of the year, which we've got a couple months left, and Jason's got some hunts lined up. I've got a few left to do, and then we're also going to kind of do just a quick projection into 2018, thinking about what states, talking about points where, we may potentially have an opportunity to draw some tags and hopefully, share some of those memories that we've had this year again into 2018. So with that, kind of to start out the year, I drug you out of the house this year and took you turkey hunting.
Turkeys. I apologize for all those people that are turkey junkies out there, but had never really gone out and turkey hunted until this year with Lucas. And of course, he being a crazy guy with a stick and a string trying to kill a gobbler. How many times we go up that same hill? I mean, two or three dozen. Every time you give up, he gobbles back on the same spot.
Exactly. The funny thing about turkey hunting is they call turkey hunting, they call turkeys the feathered elk, right? And I think the reason they do that is there's a lot of similarities to hunting turkeys as there are elk. Now, granted, clearly it's a completely different type of hunting, that you do, but at the same time, you hear a bird gobble, and okay, there's a gobbler. So immediately, it's kind of like elk hunting. When you hear a bugle, you're like, oh, time to go chase that bugle.
Time to go.
Same thing that we did. We hunted public lands for a couple months, and we chased a ton of turkeys, a ton of birds around. Didn't get the opportunity to harvest one this year. Had the opportunity to, just chose not to. I had multiple opportunities to shoot some smaller, younger birds, and just didn't take that opportunity. I was kind of looking for a little more of a mature, longer bearded, tom this year, and had a few opportunities, just didn't make them happen. But I enjoy hunting in spring for a couple reasons. One, everything's green, everything's lush. We had a great year of moisture. We had a ton of water this year, so everything was very lively this year. And the other reason I like to hunt in the spring is I get to see elk, I get to see deer, I get to see all different types of other species animals that we hunted or that we typically hunt throughout the course of the year. But it was pretty amazing how much water we had, this year in turkey hunting versus, years in the past. So
yes, it was absolutely crazy. I mean, come on, let's face facts. California's been in a drought for how many years? Seems like forever.
Exactly.
So for us to be able to actually, how do we want to describe it? See all the beautiful green grass and the water everywhere. It was just nuts, dude.
Yeah.
I mean, seriously, this is the most we've seen, in 10 years.
Exactly.
So.
And the last few years that I'd hunted this stretch of public land, I mean, it was dry riverbeds. So you were crossing, you see, turkeys in this little island. We'll just buzz over there. Well, this year was like a couple times I fell in up to my waist because I was thinking, well, that's not as deep as I think it is. And then I would go in, and then the water went up to my waist a few times trying to get across. But, it was just an incredible year of moisture going into late 2016 and then into the kind of the winter months of 2017. Just a lot of water, which, again, provided for a lot of grass, a lot of vegetation for the animals this year, which I think was part of the reason that, as we maybe kind of segue into some of the deer hunting that we did, there was a ton of good bucks this year. And I think, part of that proportionally is due to having a year where there's plenty of feed. And when there's plenty of feed, there's plenty of water. These deers typically, you'll see them at 20 to 30 inches a year based on that. So.
Yeah, I would say I was actually surprised at the deer population, especially the bucks, but there was a good deer population out this year. And what's really interesting is all the young bucks that we saw. I think over that couple of week period of time when we were hunting, I'm pretty sure we located over 11 or 12 different spikes.
Yeah.
And, now we know this is California, you guys. I mean, come on. I mean, I tell everybody that I take blacktail hunting. If you pass a fork on one side and a spike on the other in hunting season, in rifle season, there's a high probability you will not take home a blacktail deer.
Yeah,
it's just the way it's been.
Yeah, and this year especially, our archery season opens in July, which this year it was kind of early July. So, we're dealing with, high 90s, low 100-degree temperatures during the day. We get a cooling spell at night, but care for meat is so important when you're hunting these blacktail in the archery season in July and August, because, if you hit one through the night and don't find him the next morning, you may have a spoiled animal laying on the ground if you don't get to that animal.
Yeah. So, and we, it's funny, since we hunt with a lot of people from out of state, and go places like Arizona, Nevada, and Utah, and we go elsewhere, Montana, when you tell a person, well, I hate to say it, but our deer season's over, they just look at you like that deer in the headlights, no pun intended. Like, what? I don't understand. We just finished archery, but in California, especially where we're located in the southern region, basically our season's over.
Yeah, seasons are different.
Deer hunting with a rifle ended September 21st or 22nd?
Yeah, it was the weekend that, I got back from Montana, or we got back from Arizona. So, yeah, it is. It's funny. I'd shot my blacktail this year on opening day, and I had sent some photos to a few guys, and they're like, "You already shot a deer? It's July." I'm like, "Yeah, it's California. We start archery hunting in July." And it
was a 100-degree day, too.
Exactly. And most people that have never hunted in California or hunt, in our state understand that is, when our season is. So, yeah, it was a good year. I was very happy. I mean, I harvested a good deer on the first day. You and I had, I would say, on average, probably 3 to 4 stalks a day on deer when you and I would go out. I know you had filmed a couple times where we literally stopped, got out of the truck, walked down 100 yards, pushed out 2 bucks, and I had a deer at what appeared to be about 65 yards. I think I shot at 60 yards, and the arrow went just below him. But
oh, come on, let's be honest. I was filming. I was behind you. You said how far? I said 60. It was really 65. I miscalled it. It was my bad. I screwed up.
I'll let you tell the story, because I wasn't going to tell the story.
No, well, I screwed up. He would have had a second buck on his wall this year, but,
that's okay.
His helpful friend was following behind him, trying to keep a safe distance, and lo and behold, thought that he was further in front of me, but what I didn't realize is when he froze, I just kept sneaking up to get the camera right over his shoulder, and I had already ranged him, and I gave him the wrong yardage. So,
but yeah, I mean, we had multiple encounters of deer on multiple evenings. Like I said, I know you and I would go in 5-6 o'clock, and within less than an hour, we were stalking on deer. And the funny thing was that I found is a lot of the deer were out feeding earlier this year. They were out, and of course it's archery season, so they're not feeling the crunch like they do during rifle season. But a lot of those deer were coming out and feeding, into the early evening, where we had the opportunity to have, multiple stalks with those deer at any given time. So that made it pretty neat. And like I said, we were into a ton of deer throughout the course of, the archery season, and just made it nice for us to be able to, have those opportunities. Because normally, if some folks get maybe 1 to 2 stalks a year on a buck in archery season, I mean, they've done well. So, yeah, we had a really good deer season. And one of the things I wanted to talk about, I don't know if you've read about this or not, but, when California went to the mandatory harvest reporting, which went into effect last year, which is a requirement this year as well, the data that they gathered last year, I had heard that they are proposing not allowing 2 deer tags in A zone anymore. Had you heard that? Or
I have not heard that. No.
I had. I don't know if it came across in the California hunter email that I get, or something that I had seen. They were looking at potentially proposing stopping us to allow us to have 2 deer tags for the A zone, or I guess your second deer tag. So that's something that we may need to look at a little more and see if that's something that we want to maybe send a letter or send in a, some type of note on, because, I think you and I saw this year, clearly there was a lot of deer this year, and they always get shot up, in our units that we hunt, but
it's public land. There's a lot of
absolutely.
people. A lot of people. I had not heard that, but it does not surprise me. Okay, do we really want to get into California Fish and Game?
Probably not.
They have no control over the predator population. That's just a reality of life. Everything's been taken away from us. Mountain lion hunting was removed years and years ago, which is a total senseless crock.
Yeah.
The only time a mountain lion gets taken is when Fish and Game deems it a problem animal. And then guess what? They hire a private person to come in, trapper, to chase the cat down and kill it. Okay?
Yeah.
We have no control over our bears. Bear hunting is off the charts right now. I mean, I tell everybody that's going blacktail hunting in Northern California, have you ever killed a black bear? And if their answer is no, I'm like, well, you better buy a black bear tag, because in a 5-day hunt, there's a higher probability of us seeing a couple black bears than potentially a couple of legal bucks.
Yeah.
And my brother just called just a few weeks ago on one of the weekends that he went out, and they actually saw 3 different black bears in one of our little places, actually the place that my son killed his big 4x4 last year. And he said, well, surprise, surprise, there was no bucks there,
Yeah.
All the bucks were gone, the black bears were there, and, if you can't control your predator population, your deer herd suffers. I mean, anybody that doesn't think a coyote doesn't kill fawns is sadly mistaken. Anybody that thinks a black bear can't chase down a deer, you're sadly mistaken.
Yeah.
And then we get to the biggest predator, the mountain lion, and the mountain lion will kill a deer a week.
And we saw that evidence last year on your Goodale hunt, right? I mean, we saw 2 decent bucks that had been, suspect or taken due to a mountain lion.
Oh, absolutely. Well, the one had a mountain lion actually on the carcass.
Yeah.
I mean, come on. That's kind of undescribable there.
Yeah.
When you go to a place that you've been seeing a lot of deer and you're thinking possibly a new buck had moved in, and you get there and there's not a deer in the valley. I mean, it's gone. There's no life in there at all, and you're thinking, well, this is strange. And all of a sudden you find out, surprise, surprise, hey, look, we found a mountain lion. Hey, look, the mountain lion's on a buck that it's killed. So, anyway, okay, we digress.
Yeah,
we shouldn't do that, but
it's all good. So, so blacktail season was a good year. A lot of our friends had harvested some good deer this year. Some of our local friends and a couple of the outfitters that we know, they had had some really successful clients this year harvest some good deer. So it was good to see us have a year where like some of the antler growth has come back, and we've seen some better deer this year. And I don't know about you, but I think the blacktail this year, eating-wise, those tenderloins that we had, I'm not sure that I've had a better blacktail than the blacktail that we've had this year. So it's been really, really good quality meat for us.
Well, yeah, that was some fantastic meat. But I think that, too, some of the horn growth that we saw this year was some of the best that we've seen, too. I mean, we've seen some bucks on social media this year that are just off the chart, right? I mean, you showed me a couple of pictures from A zone, B zone, and a couple of people that we know that took deer this year. And the genetics that we hunt where we're located are not that strong. But in the other areas, the forage was so good, the moisture was so good that, I mean, the deer put on some great horns this year. Yep,
mass was good, and, they were definitely healthier. I think we saw less deer this year where, they looked like they were emaciated and didn't have a lot of, food to eat. I mean, the deer this year definitely were much healthier, which, again, is a good outlook for next year, in the hopes that there were a few bucks that, maybe didn't showcase themselves in the archery and rifle season as they're in their heavy rut, season now. And hopefully those bucks will, turn up next year, and we'll have some opportunities to hunt some good blacktail next year as well. So. And
then you just said something interesting that people will probably be going, what? It's October, early October, and you said the rut. Well, guess what? This is technically the time that our black-tailed deer in our southern region actually rut.
Yeah.
They're chasing does around, and we actually have a doe and a fawn that live kind of in our neighborhood on the edge of town where you and I live, and I'm sure within the next couple of days that there'll be a buck snooping around. He'll be there to breed those two does and then move on.
Yeah, and every year usually you see a buck come into, behind our house up in the hills there, and last year I saw that buck and he was chasing a doe, and that's just, that's the circle of life, right? I mean, every doe goes into heat about the same time or at some point within that cycle, and there's typically a buck within close proximity there to handle that. So, yeah, a lot of good things in terms of blacktail, a lot of positives going into next year, and the other part is I have a taxidermy bill for one this year, so which isn't a bad thing.
And I think it's hilarious because I might have said something like, when you said, man, I really want to kill a big blacktail, and I was like, buddy, it's going to take you a few years to pull that feat off. That's not an easy thing to do. And then here you go out on opening day and whack an absolute great buck, especially with archery equipment. I mean, that would have been a good deer anywhere. So
sure. No, it was good.
Congratulations to that one.
Yeah, thank you. Speaking of congratulations and hammering down this spring pig hunting, your kids were killers this spring. I mean, both Amber and Wyatt had a lot of opportunities and made them happen on pig hunts this year, and put some meat in the freezer for sure.
Absolutely. Both of them had a great opportunity. And actually, what's funny, I mean, living where we live, I mean, pig hunting is pretty popular, but I don't pig hunt that much. And besides, most of the times the pigs aren't that great tasting. This year, holy cow.
Yeah.
The forage for the pigs, the barley fields and everything that the pigs were eating, man, premium meat. I mean, both those pigs that my kids took, in my opinion, were better than getting a pig from the grocery store. I mean, it was fantastic. In fact, the funny part is my daughter killed hers first. We had the backstrap and tenderloins. We actually, in like a month, ate both backstraps and all the tenderloins from hers, and I think we've only got one roast left. I mean, we've ate that whole pig of hers in less than a couple of months. But the positive note is the boy shot one too. So you were with them on that hunt, and you actually did a birthday video for him. That was pretty cool stuff. I don't know if anybody's had a chance to see that, but that was fun. Yeah,
on our YouTube channel, it's happy birthday. I think is it happy birthday boar? I can't remember what I called him. I should know what I called it. Anyway,
it was neat, though.
There's a pig hunting video that I made for Jason's son Wyatt. It's about 6 or 7 minutes long, and it kind of shows we took him in. We had a spotted pig in one of the fields that we could just barely make him out because the field was so high, and the alfalfa had grown in quite a bit. But Wyatt made the shot. A couple 100 yards, wasn't it? 200-300 yard shot at least.
I think it was 240. I think.
Yeah. And he made it. He hammered down, and that pig didn't go very far. And, just great eating. I was thinking back to when you said how good they tasted this year. When Alex and Johnny were out in January, February, and had hunted that hog, and we had cut some of that up and ate some of that meat. That was some of the brightest red pork meat I'd ever seen in my life.
Yeah.
And that was an excellent eating pig. The tenderloins, backstraps, and I made a lot of that into summer sausage. It was phenomenal. It was absolutely phenomenal.
No, I mean, wild game meat, for those people that are listening that are like, oh my God, this is my first time you guys are talking about eating wild game meat. You can get bad meat anywhere. You can get bad meat in the grocery store.
Yeah.
I mean, bought some chicken in Arizona and at Walmart, and 2 days later it was rotting. I mean, it was gross. I mean, I should have taken it back is what I should have done, but we're in the hills. But man, the leanness of the elk and the tastiness of the pig. I mean, this has been one of those years where, like I said, we just were in Vegas for a couple of days and we had great meals, don't get me wrong, but the whole time I was thinking, I just spent $30 for a steak that is half as good as the elk steak is waiting for me at home that I've been dry aging for the last 2 weeks.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, in the pig hunting this year, just in general, was great. I mean, we'd spent a lot of time helping a friend of ours, Brad, with some of his hunts, and I was a part of, I'm not even sure how many pig harvests this year. I mean, it was double digits for sure, and I actually was fortunate to turn up a pig myself and got into what you guys thought was like 5 yards, but I was actually at about, I think, 28 to 30 yards, and that boar came right to me, and it was funny because we were sitting on top of the ridge. We were getting ready to basically leave, right? We were packing up.
Yep.
And I think you had spotted that dark boar, and he was feeding his way up from the water. I just dropped in, sat behind a hay bale, and he basically walked right to me.
I have to say, from my standpoint, I was on top of the ridge line. I saw the pig coming. He was moving at a good clip, and when you said, well, I'm just gonna go down there and sit behind that bale of hay, I thought, dude, there's like 10 different directions this pig can go. This is a waste of time. But when you drop down there, I started looking at that boar. I'm like, man, it's kind of coming this direction. And then as it gets a little closer, I'm going, well, now it's narrowed down to probably 3 drainages that it can go. Now it's getting towards 2. Holy cap, it's going to run right to him.
Yeah.
And the best part's when I'm sitting there with my range-finding binoculars and I'm looking, and all of a sudden I say to myself, okay, the pig is coming right at him, and he's not drawn his bow yet. And all of a sudden, you and the pig are in the same exact view of the binoculars. And I'm thinking, this pig is like got to be 5 yards away from him, and he hasn't done anything. And all of a sudden, you draw back. I'm like, oh, this pig's dead. I mean, literally, it had no clue. It just walked right into your bedroom, and you just slayed him. It was awesome.
Pumped him, and yeah, that was actually the first harvest with my new Matthews Halon bow that I had purchased that spring. So that was neat to kind of get that all dialed in and get the first one on the board. And then I got my blacktail this summer, and which kind of takes us to the fall, which was a pretty epic fall when you think about it from an elk hunting standpoint. September, this was definitely what I would call a September to remember for a lot of different reasons. But really mostly was, Amber's hunt, her Arizona hunt, that she was the successful recipient of the 1 non-resident tag for an early rifle tag in Unit 22. And, you and I had really high expectations, right? We went and scouted for a weekend, and then we kind of looked at each other and said, well, if we turn up a 330 bull, then we were probably doing good. Now, granted, we'd only spent 2.5 days scouting, so we didn't get to put a lot of glass out there. But for what we saw, I was a little skeptical on the unit, wondering, is this, a unit realistically that we could shoot a 350 type bull or greater? And that was my assessment of that unit when we went and scouted.
When we went and scouted, of course, I wasn't too. We only saw that one good bull that we thought was, 320, 330 class bull, but we saw a lot of elk. So my internal thing from all the research and all the studying and everything like that said that we should be able to find something fantastic. But while I said that, you always question everything, and, so I do what I did. I planned on being there, 4 or 5 days prior to the season to spend my time, put in your dues, and try to find the best bull possible. Well, in 5 days of pre-scouting, when you finally on the day before opener see your first mature 6-point bull elk, you then go to the holy crap, maybe my expectations are not what they should have been. Mm-hmm. But
yeah, so kind of fast forwarding a little bit, I had spent around 14 to 15 days in Montana, and went up there and got a good 6-point bull down, and then I hunted some antelope for a few days, spent some time with my family, and then I shot down to Payson, drove from Dillon, literally went from about 20 degrees and snowing to anything as high as I think 85 degrees. Then when I dropped into Flagstaff, it cooled down again, and then when I met you guys at camp, it was starting to cool a little bit, but was a 16 and a half hour drive on the road for me to get down there. But once I got there, I was exhausted. At the same time, when I heard elk bugling that night, it got me fired up again, and I was pretty excited for that hunt.
Absolutely. Well, as my daughter said, we went out opening morning, and we knew you weren't coming in until that evening. But I told her, I said, hey, look, we see a great bull. We're going to do it. And she's like, oh, I really want Lucas to be here. And what's funny is we got into a place, we saw like 5 or 6 raghorns and a whole bunch of elk, but the wind was all wrong for us, and there was no way to get around it. And she looked at me and goes, well, the elk hunting gods are not with us because Lucas isn't here yet. And I just started laughing. I was thinking, that is hilarious. I mean, I had probably told her a couple of times that, hey, no, if we find one, we're gonna put the hammer down. But she was really wanting you to be there for it. So,
which was awesome. I mean, we did a whole podcast together on her successful harvest, and we won't go into a lot of details because y'all can listen to that episode. But that was just a fun week to spend with, obviously you and Amber, and then, friends that were there and family that were there, and just to be literally walk out of our camp where we were and, within minutes be hunting elk is essentially the way it was. In any direction that we went, there was really good elk populations. Granted, the quality of bulls, we didn't see just a plethora of that higher class, older age class, caliber of bull. But when it all came together on, that Tuesday, evening, it sure happened the way it did. And it was pretty amazing when that bull showcased itself and Amber made that shot.
A little bit of lady luck goes a long ways. We'll take it every time.
Yeah, that was just phenomenal and fun hunt. And like I said, just to be in Arizona with basically a rifle tag in your pocket in the middle of September is something special. Most people will never experience that in their lifetime.
Well, and I did tell my daughter, I said, this is really, really something that you got to cherish because, and I hate to say this, there's a probability that she'll never have an opportunity like that in the rest of her life.
Yeah.
And I've never had that opportunity yet. I mean, I'm been doing this for quite a few years, and I've yet to hunt bugling elk in the rut with a rifle. So, I mean, for that opportunity to happen for her, I don't know. As I said in the other podcast, it was more stressful for me as a dad on that hunt than almost any other hunt that I've been on in the last few years. Mm-hmm. Maybe my sheep hunt was more stressful for me just because of all the effort I had put into it. But boy, trying to make a goal of your child's come true, it was pretty stressful to start off with, especially when you call in elk to 30 yards, and I'm telling her, no, do not take the gun off safety. No, we're not shooting this bull. But let's practice what we would do, And when I'd stop the elk in an opening, and I'm like, could you put the crosshairs behind the shoulder? Yes. Okay, take your finger off the trigger, sweetheart. We are not shooting. Take your finger off the trigger. It's like just kind of one of those fun things. But,
well, and you had some objectives, that you wanted to meet. Clearly you and I had, since we found out she had drew the tag in, February, March, we had high expectations, but you had some things that, in the back of your mind, you wanted her to experience elk bugling, right? You wanted her to experience a bull coming in to a cow call or some type of call sequence, get the bull to stop, so she would have that experience going into the shot. And, and then clearly, harvest of a successful elk. And I'm pretty certain that we met all of those objectives, for her. and she got to experience that real, September, not total rut action because they weren't really in a full rut, but she got to experience elk, in that part of the season where they are very vulnerable, and it's a lot of fun to hunt elk when they're bugling and when you can hear them. It's just tough country there, and it's not like you can sit in glass for miles and pick out elk here, elk there. I mean, you're literally in thickets of cedars and PJ where if you can see 60, 70 yards in front of you, you're doing pretty good. And that's what made that hunt challenging.
Well, and that's 100% about that. That area was really neat. It was unique. It was a different scenario. But, when you draw on a rifle tag, you're thinking, at least what I was thinking is I was like, okay, well, we prepped for a potentially, 400-plus yard shot, hoping that it would be less than 200. But with a rifle, really didn't want to be in that, under 100-yard distance, right? We wanted to have a safe distance where the animal would be nice and calm and it'd be stationary. And what we found after a couple of days of hunting in that particular area that we were, that, man, we literally, we had to get close to the elk. I mean, we were literally chasing bugles. It was archery hunting, except for you had a gun in your hand.
Yeah.
I mean, how many times were we within 50, 80 yards of 2 or 3 different bulls and cows, and we never did see them?
Yeah,
I mean,
and
had to be at least 5 or 6 different occasions, maybe even when I wasn't with you, that I was in that situation with her where, there's 2 or 3 elk all talking to each other, and lo and behold, you're with a rifle and you cannot see anything.
Yeah, and I think you and I had that discussion, Saturday, Sunday-ish time frame after I had went and spent a day on my own, just kind of trying to cover country, see if I could find at least a bull that, was something that we wanted to shoot. And I came to that realization that we need to hunt these elk like it's archery hunting. We need to be aggressive. We need to set up. We need to get the wind on our side, and we just need to call and have them come in. And we had multiple times where that happened, and more times than not, we didn't even see the bull. And you knew he was, 60, 70 yards away. You could hear him glunking. You could hear him bugling. You could hear him raking trees. But it's so thick in there, and they catch one glimmer of wind or anything sent on their side, and, they're gone. So it was tough. It was definitely... it was a little stressful for me because I knew how stressful it was on you, and that's part of the reason why I was there, was to help and make that successful. And, at the end of the day, I don't think any of us could be any happier for how that hunt ended up.
No, we had great backup plans. I mean, the reality was that we had a mature 5x6 that 99.9% of the people out there that public land elk hunt would be like, you didn't shoot that as soon as you found it? What? That bull hit that water hole every day in the morning and in the evening.
Yeah.
Every day like clockwork with these cows. I mean, we had him dead to rights. So we had a backup plan that, in my opinion, was a slam dunk.
Yeah.
And it was a mature bull. What do you think the fronts on that 5x6 were?
20 plus inches. I mean, that one front is, it's 24 to 25 inch front, I'm guessing.
If his fifth side would have had a 6-point on it, we would have slam dunked him for sure.
Yeah.
I think conservative guess is he was probably a 320 class 5x6.
Yeah.
Now maybe he was 310, 320.
Sure.
But he was I think he was a 5-year-old bull.
He was very mature. He just missed, that 6-point, which, as we know, 5 points don't score very well. But he just had something about him. Like I said, he was very mature. His fronts were the fronts that you would shoot on a 350 plus class bull. He just lacked that that 6-point on that left side. So and it was we had that as a backup plan. we knew of another bull that was a pretty large bull. Neither you or I had seen it, but the other groups in our camp had seen that bull. And then we had also spotted another tall 6x6 on the mountain that we had basically camped on that we hadn't turned up yet again, but we knew potentially could have been on some of the private land back in there. So we did have, backup plans, but it's good to have a backup plan, but
Absolutely.
you never want to have to use it if your primary plan works as it should. So, yeah, we were very fortunate to harvest and had a great night that evening. Had some cup of soups for dinner since it was about 1 a.m. Did a podcast, and then I got on the road the next day, and I think you guys camped another night and took care of the elk and came back. So
not quite sure how you pulled off getting up in the morning, getting all your stuff, and getting out of there because I was absolutely fried.
Yeah, it was a long night.
I needed an extra day to make sure that I didn't forget something laying on the ground.
Yeah, no, but that was a great trip. Definitely one for the records, and I think the memories we shared, with everyone in camp, and like I said, family and friends, was something that I'll always remember for the rest of my life.
It's what it's all about. It's what it's all about. Family and friends and the outdoors.
Yeah, so kind of looking towards the end of the year, you've got another hunt on the books. You're going to be taking Wyatt, who we talked about earlier, who harvested a pig this spring, to Nevada on a pretty good mule deer area in Nevada, which, as we know, when most guys that apply in Nevada know that every unit in Nevada has the potential to have a good deer. Now,
absolutely. Some
have obviously, more trophy class potential than others, require more points, but in general, Nevada has the ability to shoot, a 150 to a 170 class deer up to a 200-inch deer in any unit.
Absolutely.
Right?
Absolutely.
So, so you guys are leaving the end of October for that hunt?
I think our schedule right now is we're hoping to leave out probably the 26th. I've taken the end of the week off as well as the following week. And then his season actually starts October 21st, and it actually runs all the way through November 5th. But our hopes are that, towards the end of November, or beginning of the end of his hunt, the beginning of November, that there could be some potential for the rut to kick in. So right now what I'm looking at is I'm going to plan on hopefully a 9-day run over there, because it'll take 12 hours to get there. So once we get there, then hopefully we'll go right into hunt mode. Do need to test the long range guns, because I have scouted that area, and there is the potential of shooting
a longer shot there,
400 plus yards without a doubt.
Yeah.
And my boy is pretty adequate when it comes to firing a gun, as we both know.
Yep.
He killed his first blacktail at 644 yards. So I mean, it's kind of nuts, but at the same time, he's a calm, collected,
cold-blooded killer, I think, is what he is.
I was going to say bullet sender, but cold-blooded killer works too.
Yeah, he's got ice in his veins for sure.
Yeah.
So you had gone and scouted this unit. You had went up and spent some time on business and had an opportunity to spend a day or two looking around. Kind of what overall, I mean, what did you see in terms of topography, landscape? I mean, is it conducive to potentially holding a good deer, a couple good deer, you think?
You know what? And here's the funny part is this is a 111 to 114 hunt in Nevada for those people that know the geographical area. That's outside of Ely. I've been to Nevada numerous times. Been up to the Reno area, realized there was some hills there, drove out through and across Nevada a couple different times. Most time when you head out in Nevada, if anybody could see what Lucas and I are looking at right now, it's flat with some roly-poly hills and a whole bunch of sagebrush.
Mm-hmm.
In my brain, that's what it was going to be like. Yet, when I got there to Ely, Nevada, which is, 4,000 or 5,000 foot elevation, and looked at the mountains behind it, you go, oh my gosh, this looks like the Goodale scenario where, you've got peaks that run right up 12,000 feet, and it's like, it was beautiful up there, man.
Yeah.
You have to go to see it, but it's one of those places that, I was like, That was great. I mean, the lowland, they had the farms down at the edges of the mountains, and then the pinyon and the juniper, and then it'd go up into the valleys, and then all of a sudden you'd hit the timber, and then you'd go above the timber line, and you're like, dude, this is incredible.
Yeah.
And really, when you look at that area, in my mind, man, it screams mule deer. It screams mule deer. We scouted a couple different areas. We didn't see a huge concentration of bucks, but we did see 2 bucks. Wyatt and I saw a really nice, probably 28-inch 4x4 wide, but he had small forks on him, but he was super wide. I don't know. I'm with, it kind of
sucks you in a little bit.
Yeah, some of us, like my dad and myself, whenever it gets wide, you start getting a little stupid, and you're thinking, just shoot it and we'll figure it out later.
Yeah.
But
we'll count points later. It's really wide.
Exactly. It's really wide. It might be a 2-point, but it's really wide. So, but yeah, no, I think this area has harvested some 200 class deer. And then what's funny is I was watching a hunting TV show just the other day, and all of a sudden they showed a scene, and I'm like, wait a second, that's Ely, Nevada. And next thing I know, they're doing an archery hunt right there.
Yeah.
And we are literally looking. They hunted in the same area that we're going to be hunting. They were just bow hunting, and they killed a really nice 185 class deer, and they saw numerous other ones that were, in my opinion, better than the deer that they ended up killing.
Wow.
So
okay, well, that's good to see some of that. And like I say, with having been there, I know you'd hooked up with some folks that got you some information about some different places to drive and some different places to look. But after having going there and seeing some of that and getting some intel, I mean, what do you see as I guess a projection for Wyatt? I mean, I know the selfish side of you says we're going to shoot a big deer, but I mean, realistically, what do you think you and also Wyatt would be happy with going there?
I would say my expectations are I don't really want to shoot a deer smaller than about a 150 class deer, but at the same time, if something cool and unique pops up, that might change. I'd really like him to shoot an old age class deer is what I'd like him to do.
Yeah,
something
nice,
with mass, maybe something a little freaky, weird. But at the same time, I talked to a friend of mine that lives there, and his boy actually has an early season, which ends, I think, the weekend of the 27th, 28th of October. He actually, he was telling me he thought that, a 160 to 170 class deer was definitely doable in that area.
Yeah.
As long as we had the time to spend,
Sure.
And as long as, trigger happy Wyatt doesn't accidentally shoot something smaller.
Yeah. Well, Wyatt knows. I mean, like I say, he's hunted a lot of plains game in Africa, and he's harvested some really good animals in the States. He's got a pretty good knack for knowing, what's a good deer, what's not a good deer. Obviously, having you there is going to be huge. But, I mean, at the end of the day, if he's looking at a buck that he's happy with and one that's like, Dad, I really like that deer. He's got, some trash. He's got some stickers on him and some kickers. Heck, that may be the buck that, he's happy with. And again, he's got a lot of, road ahead of him for, for shooting some good deer. It's always worrisome to me when, if the 200+ inch deer shows up and he shoots it and then Dad looks at it and says, man, I may never shoot a deer like this. And he's got another 60 years of hunting like that. But
well, and the funny part is I mentally in the back of my head, I thought, man, I don't know if I really want to go back to that drainage where I saw that 28 to possibly 30-inch wide flat 4x4, because I'd probably be like, son, I think that one's good right there. First morning of our hunt up there, I'll be like, if you want to shoot that one, we're good. Let's go.
Yeah, so you definitely want to, like I said, I mean, even in this scenario, you want to have some backup plans. You want to have, if there's a deer hanging out in a couple drainages, right, you want to make sure that you've got that in the backup. But if you see a big deer in the first couple days, and I mean,
big is big.
You guys are going to be getting into the kind of the middle part of the season and then hunting it out till the end. If you see something that's good, I mean, it'd be hard pressed not to, pull the trigger on it. So
yeah, I mean, like I said, I mean, if he sees a 3x4 that's a 150 class deer and he gets all jacked up, I'm not going to stop him.
Yeah.
I mean, this is going to be a fun hunt. I'm hoping that we see lots of deer. I'm hoping we see a lot of, small forked horns and 3-points running around and doing dumb things, standing out in the middle of the road, or 5 or 6 different groups of deer in one little valley that we can spend, 4 or 5 hours, walking a ridgeline, glassing different groups of deer, where it's like every time you turn around, it's like, oh, there's another deer, you know, and if you know how your blood gets pumping, because every time I see a deer, the first thing I think of is, if the rut's sort of coming on, is he here? Is the big one here?
Sure.
And if you keep that momentum going and you look at enough deer, sooner or later, you're going to find a good deer.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm kind of looking forward. I'm going to be doing a late season mule deer hunt in Montana over Thanksgiving. So I'm going to be taking up, Brandon and I are going to drive up to Montana and spend, about 10 days going after mule deer the week of Thanksgiving, which is right in the heart of rut in Montana. So,
wish my tag was 30 days later. Oh my God.
Man. Yeah. So and that's, one thing about Montana, you pay a little more being a non-resident to hunt there, but you essentially can start hunting the first weekend in September all the way to Thanksgiving, because your tag is good for archery season, it's good for rifle season, and it's good for any of the general units. So this gives us an opportunity to get up there and, have some fun with some mule deer in the rut. And like I say, you never know. You see a lot of different bucks during the rut season, a lot of bucks you never see during the course of the year show up, and as long as you can turn up some does, you're probably going to find a buck somewhere within close proximity during that time of year. So we're looking forward to that.
Yeah, that should be a blast that you guys are getting ready to do that. And you get to go up and spend some time with your mom. That's pretty awesome.
Yeah, that's important.
One of these days, I'd love to take the kids up and go to Montana and do something like that with you. That'll be on the bucket list of stuff to do.
Yeah, we'll plan that. And going to Colorado, I'm leaving actually next week for just an over-the-counter second season tag. So that's exciting. I always enjoy Colorado. Is one of the highlights of my year when I get to go. I just enjoy being in Colorado and being in the mountains there. There's something about it. And, obviously there's a ton of wildlife there. Usually always see a couple really giant deer while I'm there, and hopeful to turn up, a good bull this year and put some more meat in the freezer and maybe another nice set of antlers on the wall. That's always a plus.
Now, folks, you do realize he said, I always seem to turn up a couple of giant mule deer, but then he also said, I only have an elk tag in my pocket.
Yeah, that's kind of a problem in Colorado,
Isn't that the way it is?
It is.
A couple of those coos deer we saw.
Oh, geez.
This last trip, and you and I are like, we're not even coos deer hunters, and we know that those are just absolute stompers, or that big mule deer we saw.
Yeah.
And, we're looking at each other like, man, never fails. You have an elk tag in your pocket? What do you see? Yep. A monster deer.
And that's what happens. A few years ago, Unit 22, which is now a 15-point unit in Colorado, we saw a giant mule deer, a foot outside his ears and from over a mile away. And we applied and drew the tag the next year and didn't turn up a forking horn that whole season. It's amazing how that happens, and that's, like I said, that's when it's going to happen. When you have an elk tag in your pocket, you're going to turn up a mule deer that, would probably go book for sure. But
yeah,
that's hunting.
Actually, that's funny, that Nevada tag that the boy has, that's a phenomenal elk unit. And I have a sneaking suspicion that while we're there deer hunting, it's karma. That's always what it is.
Yeah.
My gut tells me we're going to probably find one of those.
Pretty good bull.
If that happens, it's going to be off the charts.
Well, the hard part's going to be is how are you going to keep your lenses or your glass off those elk when you're really there looking for, for deer.
Well, come on. You and I, know me pretty well. 90% of the time when I'm elk hunting, I'm actually looking for deer.
Yeah, that's true.
And the big tan body just accidentally materializes, and I'm like, oh, look, there's a whole bunch of elk. Instead of the other way around.
Or when we're deer hunting, just a bunch of really big sheep show up, right after.
Oh my God,
that was incredible.
And they don't even have a tag in that unit.
I know.
That's just nuts, dude. Nuts.
That was pretty neat. I mean, we saw elk, sheep, and deer in the same day within a few hours of each other, all in the morning, and in that unit in the Eastern Sierras. That was just incredible. It was neat being up there seeing all that. Well, folks, that kind of wraps up our year-to-date recap of 2017. We still have, a good fair amount of hunting left to do. We've kind of worked our way through the archery season. Like I said, I'll be Colorado, Montana for mule deer, and then I'm tentatively looking at potentially doing the December 15th to 31st over-the-counter archery coos deer tag. We'll see if that materializes or not, but would like to try to get out maybe one more time this year with my bow and try to at least get something else on the board. But if not, I could say I've had a pretty good season so far, and even if it ended today, I would say I've had a pretty successful season. So
I was going to say, from my standards, if your season ended yesterday or the day before, actually, I would say that you had a off-the-charts awesome season.
Yeah, it's been a good year, and hopeful to, like I say, turn up a good bull in Colorado. I'm going to be a little picky based on the fact that, I've got, 10 days to hunt, and also have a rifle that has the potential to shoot, longer distances than I've had in the past. So, and I think back.
Huskama Optics, baby.
Yeah, absolutely. And we're going to go shoot the rifles hopefully this weekend and just try to get a last-minute dial on them before we go. But this specific area that I hunt in Colorado I've turned up good bulls every year. The problem is they were 1,000 yards away, and I couldn't close the distance on those elk. So this year might be a little different story for me, just with the fact that I do have the opportunity or the potential to, to shoot farther distances, with a rifle that's basically set up to do that. So I'm looking forward to doing that for sure.
Well, I tell you, as you already know, because I've told you this for the last 10 years, that once you get a gun like that and you actually shoot it and practice with it and become where it's your personal best friend, you kind of like feel sorry for things that you start going after, because in your brain, when you could ring a bell at 1,000 yards, you start thinking, man, things are in trouble around me. And then when they get into the 400-yard range, you're like, oh, man, I feel sorry because it's like you're so close.
Yeah.
Only 400 yards. You're so close.
I got to turn the power down on my scope.
Yeah. But, that's technology, and that's what we do.
It is.
Oh, baby.
That? I think that's our cue.
Little Jones. Ready for the Rolling Stones.
Well, that's one of the things we do while we're on the road is we like to listen to country music. So Jason's going to rock the jukebox.
Rock the juice box.
Juice box, okay.
Playing rodeo. Come on, guys. Everybody doesn't know the song, just sing along. Thank you so much for listening to the RNA Podcast. We'll be back to you real soon with another great episode of a whole bunch of whacking and stacking and having some fun. Until the next time, stay tuned to your local Garth Carter? No. Garth Jensen?
Brooks.
No. Alan Jackson Station. Woohoo!
All right, thanks, folks. And with that, we'll turn her down.
Hey everyone, this is Lucas Paw, host of the RNA Outdoors podcast. Please check out Podbean and iTunes. If you have an iPhone or iPad, go to the podcast app on your device, search for RNA Outdoors, and hit the purple subscribe button. When doing this, it will automatically upload when new podcasts are loaded, and they will download into your queue. For Android users, you can access the podcast through Podbean, Stitcher, or use our website, www.rnaoutdoors.com/podcast. In addition, under the RNA Outdoors podcast channel, please leave a review and a 5-star rating. These reviews help boost our popularity and outreach. You can also follow us on our social media outlets, Twitter at RNA Outdoors, Facebook, RNA Outdoors, and Instagram, Rod and Arrow Outdoors. All links are in the show notes as well. If you like what you've heard, we hope you'll pass along our channel to your friends and colleagues. Keep up the good fight. We cannot sit by and watch the public lands devoted to wildlife protection wither away. There's simply too much at stake. Make your voice heard, speak up, and get involved with conservation efforts, and know that every little bit helps. As we say on the mountain, go farther, stay longer.